Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. I'm your host, Ben Crossman. I hope all of you out there are having a wonderful day. As we get things kicked off here, we have another great show for you where we have Copper State Communications joining us. Yep, got that right. Copper State Communications. And yeah, we're going to be talking all about, cybersecurity, the recent threats that have been happening, and, looking forward into 2018, what you should really try to do to make sure that you keep yourself, you and your business happy, safe, and secure. So again, we're going to be joined by the CIO of the company here in just a moment. But a few things I should mention, including ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything for today's show, be it show notes, a link to our guest website, any articles that we do today, later on in the program. All of it will be available underneath today's show, and will stay up there on the homepage for probably a good 2 weeks. Also, be sure to check out the social media contest, which we will be having another winner this Friday. Keep an eye out for that. And then the last thing is, of course, the live video feed where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. We are still a radio show, so, it's just another way to augment the experience. But, check that out. So, with all of that said, why don't we go ahead and introduce our guest and get this conversation started? Because, hey, this is something that has affected this year alone. So many companies, and not just companies, but everyday people. And it's almost to a guarantee that if you're listening to the show and you're living in the United States, this has affected you at some point. So joining us today is none other than Mr. Michael Lewis. He is the CIO of Copper State Communications. So, Michael, thanks for coming on Computer America.
Ben, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So, I think the best place to start would be a little bit of a background for anyone out there who hasn't, had a chance to hear about Copper State Communications. What is the company and what's its history?
Sure. So Copper State Communications is a well-established 35-year-old company located in Arizona. And specifically, we have offices in Phoenix, Flagstaff, and Tucson. We cover the whole state. We are basically the company for all things IT and telecom in Arizona. Once the slab is put down, I like to say, we can do the cabling, the phone systems, the voice and data and cloud and IT, and even managed services. So we cover everything. We've serviced more than 22,000 customers since 1982. Our team members have an average of 20 years in the industry, and we have an average of about 14-year tenure here at the company. So everyone likes the company. Cool. Customers love Copper State.
Yeah, very, very cool. It sounds like people who join the team there really do stick around. That's awesome to hear because 14 years on average, but you guys have been, as you said, in business since 1982. And I'm not sure how long that you've been with the company, but if you could speak to and this is going to roll into our conversation we're going to be having, but the need for IT services in everyday businesses, because 1982, I'm sure that there were only a handful of businesses that really took a strong interest in making sure that they were well wired and things like that. But nowadays, what's the difference between the before and the after?
Well, I've been with the business here at Copper State for 10 years. In 1982, there wasn't really much going on with that whole IT thing. We were more of a telecommunications company, if anyone remembers the old Nortels and the BCM product and stuff like that. That's what we were servicing. And then as we were, installing phone systems, it finally dawned on us that, hey, we're inside the company, and the next thing they would ask us, do you do IT? And so at first we're going, no, we don't, and we sat around and thought, well, why are we not doing IT? And that's how we rolled into it. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the rock to hit you, and then you go, oh, yeah, why are we not doing IT? And then we rolled into IT, and we moved forward from there. And we find that now, from 1982 to now, everybody first asks, hey, how about that IT stuff? Can you guys do that for us? And but what about phones? So it was first phones and then IT, and now it's IT and my network and my computers and all that kind of stuff. And, oh, by the way, I still need some phones.
Right.
So it's kind of flipped, but it's an interesting road.
Right, and and we've definitely seen that as well, where phones have definitely taken a back seat, and in many cases they're actually the same service. Where a lot of people voice over IP and the like, it's it's a double-edged sword. Where if one thing goes down, then hey, you lose both your forms of communication. But it seems to be the easier and more prevalent route lately. So let's talk about, let's get into our topic here, because you're here to talk about cybersecurity. And, this year it's been a roller coaster for the amount of news made every single week, it seems like, especially for the past 6 months, about, large corporations, medium-sized businesses, individuals, all hacked to some extent. Why don't you tell us about Copper State Communications and your role? Because IT can mean a lot of things. Security is only one facet of that. But talk about Copper State Communications' role in security for your customers, and just the past couple of years. How has this become, I can only assume, a bigger focus for your team?
Well, you're right, it has. A couple of years ago, or it seems like a couple of years ago, but it was longer than that. Security was something of an afterthought. You really wanted to get your systems in and going, and your people rocking and rolling, and that thing called security was, well, we're not going to spend a lot of money on that, and we don't need a security officer, and we don't need anything like that. Later on, as time progressed and people started to get hacked, the conversations started to change, and I have conversations with businesses every day, and now a major part of that conversation is security. How do I keep my intellectual property safe? How do I keep my employees where I want them to be as far as data and data, not on their machines but on my machines? But how do I share that data without getting it, spread all around the world? So there's many conversations that are going on right now, and usually it starts with security. So it depends on the vertical of the business and how we handle that security. So one of the first things that we really do is say, okay, well, let's just cover the basics. And with the basics, you really want to start with the simple three, right? I mean, you want to start with a firewall, you want to start with your antivirus, and now you really want to look at disk and file encryption. So I can go into deeper on all three of those if you like.
These are obviously the practices that you tell your customers. I'm sure a lot of people listening out there, you want to make sure that you have your bases covered as well. So go ahead, new company, new business, and let's give it something that obviously they need to talk with their customers online. They need to send files to and from. Obviously, lots of points where someone could pretend that they're someone else, or someone that they could accidentally leave something vulnerable. Go through something that is very internet intensive. How would you go about protecting a company like that?
Sure. So when I go into a new company, because they don't have anything and they're not sure what they want, and I'll just go through those. I'll start with those three, and then we can even go further on if you'd like to get into more of those details. But the first thing I ask is about the firewall. So every company out there needs to have some type of firewall. And I'm not talking about the home firewalls, which a lot of small to medium-sized, even medium-sized companies will go out and try to get. They're thinking, oh, well, I can just go out and get a, XYZ small firewall from your local computer store, and that's just not going to cut it. You need to have a commercial grade firewall. It needs to be flexible enough to do a lot of newer technologies, basically as they call it, a unified threat box where you can do antivirus on it, you can do malware detection on it, you can block DDoS attacks on it. This box will probably do everything that you ever want it to do, but it needs to be commercial grade.
So just real quick, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
We've had companies on the show here that offer either a physical or a software solution for firewalls. Is there one that you kind of prefer for customers, one over the other, or is it just a firewall is the most important firewall?
Well, if you're going to have an IT company set it up, so if I'm talking to a customer right now, our vendor partner is Sophos. So we use Sophos firewalls and we use Sophos antivirus and malware detection products, along with some of their other products. And so when you're setting up this firewall, the idea really is to look at the business. So let's say an example real quick is that I have a new business and I do business only in Arizona. All my customers are in Arizona. I'm a painter, let's just say that. So I don't really go outside of the state of Arizona.
Right.
So I have a big painting company. So we're asking them, okay, well, who are your suppliers? What are you doing with that? Well, hey, I created this new way of putting on paint, and it's really cool, and I don't want everybody in the whole world to know about it. So I do have some IP there. Great, no problem. One of the first things, very simple, is if you don't do business with certain countries, then with a commercial grade firewall, why not just block the whole country? Just block it so that you don't have to worry about getting hacked from that country. Now, hackers are smart, just like a thief is smart. They don't steal from their own neighborhood. They go outside the neighborhood to steal, right? So there are certain times where you're thinking, well, I've just been hacked from Germany. No, they just bounced off of a German server and they've come into your business that way. But at least you can circumvent them coming directly, an amateur hacker or a rent-a-box hacker, and stop them from coming in from countries that you have no business with. So that's one of the first things that you do is get a great firewall. Also get the firewall that has some intelligence that can figure out when you're getting, attacked from the outside, and just block the IP address. Just have it automatically block it, move on. Sooner or later, they'll just move on and go to someone easier.
That is, and that's some advice that we keep running into is that it's not about making yourself bulletproof. I mean, I'm sure that you have customers, we've heard it here on the show before that everyone wants to be, pay enough money to an IT company such as yourself, and they go, make me impervious to hacking. And, it's just not possible, but you can make yourself more difficult. You can put up the barricades and it will be, something at least, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, how much money do you have? Because I can spend a ton of money, trying to keep every bad guy out, and somehow they always seem to be able to come in. So the idea is just like when you're at your house, you just want to make your house that much more uninviting so that they move on to your neighbor.
Gotcha.
That's really what you're trying to do, right? I mean, if I leave my windows open and my door open and a light that's in my living room with the big, 70-inch screen that says, come and take me, well, it's probably going to be taken. But if I protect my house and it looks like it's protected and there's a big German Shepherd in the window, well, they're probably going to go to the next door.
Right. So we have firewall, make it a good one, and make sure you set up everything, all nice and tidy. So that's number one. Number two.
Number two is have a good virus and malware detection software and set it up appropriately. So most people think that antivirus and malware are the same thing, but they're not. We've always used them together, antivirus / anti-malware. So people got used to saying it together. They're separate, actual, distinct applications and programs. So malware is kind of like a broad term that it describes everything, right? Viruses, spyware, adware, Trojans, worms, nagware, all of that stuff really. Yeah, absolutely. Cryptoware, ransomware, that's all malware. Malware is just unwanted or malicious code. A virus is a specific type of malware, and it is what it is. It's a virus. It's designed to try and spread itself and replicate itself just like a virus would in your body, like a cold or something like that, right? You're going to sneeze and give someone else the cold. So when you're dealing with these two types of packages, what usually happens is that you will get either a drive-by, you're on someone's website, and you're shopping or you're downloading something, and you get some malware. Okay, so you have unwanted or malicious code. If you do not have an anti-malware package that is intelligent enough to pick up that malware, what it will do is try to set up a callback to a home server and then download the payload, which then may be a virus. Or it could be virus and some more malware, which is potentially cryptoware. So now I've downloaded that information and I'm setting up the cryptoware to encrypt your drive and lock it from you and then keep you from it until you pay me some money of some type. So you need to have antivirus software and anti-malware. You need to have that ability to look, or your application needs to have that ability to look at that code that's running and go, you know what, that's very suspicious code, and I'm just going to stop that service or block that directory or change the access control list on that directory so that the application can no longer work. Now, if the malware does work and it gets out there and it starts to download the virus, your antivirus needs to be able to say, oh, okay, hold on. I see this package coming down and I'm looking at the hash of it and I can see that it's bad. I'm going to either try to block it from finishing downloading or block it from running and keep it off the system at that point in time. So you need a package that can do both, not one or the other.
Right.
And it needs to have some intelligence in it because these hackers are getting smarter. So they're actually trying to write software that has signatures that say, hey, I'm an okay, piece of code. You can let me in. And some of them have successfully done that so that even the virus or anti-malware, the antivirus, anti-malware can't pick it up, which means now you need to go to a little bit of artificial intelligence.
Right, and that is that's certainly something that we have heard more and more about, especially this year. It seems to be the year of AI. I was about to say antivirus, but no, of artificial intelligence, and the things that it can do. And just like you were saying, where how much money do you have? I'm sure that one of our sponsors is FireDragon Security. They do for medium large businesses, they do constant monitoring of web traffic, and they determine what is kind of bad and what's good, what's going somewhere that it shouldn't, things like that. And paying someone, paying a company to do that, certainly possible, kind of out of reach for the individual, let alone for many starting businesses. But AI, it's starting to play a bigger role where it's kind of like having someone sit there and go, is this right? And, it can really fill in some of these gaps. So, all right. So, but I'm not sure if AI is going to be your number 3. So 1, firewall, 2, antivirus and anti-malware. What's your number 3?
Number 3 is something very simple everyone can do, and it's usually free. It's disk encryption / file encryption. So you really wouldn't think about this, but for disk encryption, it's an easy one, right? If someone comes and steals my computer, well, it's encrypted. So even though they have it, it's kind of a brick. It's not going to give them any information. They can't get into it. Even if they can get into the computer itself, they can't decrypt the information that's on the hard drive because the whole disk is encrypted. But what a lot of people miss is actually doing file encryption. Now, why would you want to do file encryption? Well, think about online services like Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, Google Drive, XYZ Drive. You're storing files out there in the cloud. And I know that, they all say, hey, we're secure, we're the best in the world. And as we know, everyone's had breaches. Mm-hmm. So you're writing your IP, right? I'm going back to, I have that super secret way of applying paint. And I'm writing the document up, and I save it right up there on one of the boxes. But it's unencrypted. So if the service, the hosting provider, gets hacked, well, there goes your IP. But if you file encrypted, even if you save it to one of your online storage centers, it's all encrypted. No one can decrypt it except for you or whoever has the key. So I would look at doing a disk encryption and a file encryption so that when I just transfer those files around, I don't have to think about it. It's embedded into Windows. You can use Mac Vault. And it's so simple and it's free. So just turn it on and use it.
Right. No, that's certainly great advice. So even if they were able to bypass 1 and 2, then the information that they could potentially get could be certainly limited. Just to kind of wrap up on the business side, because then we're going to talk about individuals, e-commerce, and during the holidays. But just to wrap up on the business side, talk about the importance, because this is something that we have certainly tried to beat into our audience's heads. Was you can have all these in place. The IT department can do everything in their power. But if someone isn't playing ball, if someone doesn't have, the common sense tools or, kind of do things the right way, then it doesn't matter really for any of those if they click an email link and let them in, or if they do, or if they let some guy walk in the front door and let him plug a USB drive into a computer. Talk about the role of education and actually, teaching employees the best way to, keep the data safe, because it's not all on the shoulders of the IT.
Yeah, that is huge, right? Because I can spend $1 million and you could have a password that says password. What can I do about that, really? So educating users is your biggest hurdle. Now, humans do not like to keep long, complex words in their head, and that's why you can never get someone to create a decent password. I have just figured that out from all the years that I've done, this type of work. You cannot get anyone to keep a long password. So I'll give you a really, really easy way to keep a password. Okay. The first thing is it needs to be 9 characters or more, because the way that hashing algorithms work and decrypting algorithms work, it gets very difficult to crack a password that is 9 characters or more. Very difficult. As you add more characters, it becomes even harder. I mean, it moves from 3 seconds to crack a password. Once you get them to 9 characters, you're talking now into years, right? And into years, you don't care, because hopefully in years you've changed the password.
Like you said earlier, it's about making yourself less attractive than another company that may be easier.
Exactly. So I live in Arizona. We have mountains. So let's just take the word mountain, for example. Okay, so you take mountain, easy enough, but now you want to just change some of the letters into special characters and numbers. So the idea is to make the word nonsensical. So don't put too many letters together that can start to sound like a word, because with the way that they write the algorithms, they can start guessing that word, right? So if I go M-O-U before I start to encrypt something, change the other letters, well, they'll just keep pounding on that until they can figure it out. So you want to change things up inside the word, like every other letter. Try to make it a special character or a number or something like that. And if you're not really good at keeping long words, string multiple words together that you always remember, like maybe your best friend's name, but change it up a little bit, and then your dog's name, change it up a little bit, and smash it all together. So you have this very long word or this jumble of characters and numbers and letters, but you know what each chunk of that word or those letters are. That's an easy way of keeping a long password.
And you're going through this, certainly good advice. I mean, we've heard other ways of kind of encrypting your own password. One of our other security professionals, they mentioned that, you type something, like say mountain, for instance, except every single letter, you slide your finger over one to the right, so M would be, comma or colon, and O would be P, and so it becomes nonsensical when you just do something very, very simple. But this does kind of raise something in my head, and I've never run IT for a large business, but I'm more and more falling in love with the idea of two-factor authentication. I use it for pretty much every account that I have available to it. My smartphone is now essentially my bank of authentication keys. Is that something that IT or Copper State Communications is looking into, maybe like a physical way that they could verify that, hey, this is us, or just two-factor in general? Is that something, people are taking interest in?
They are. So two-factor is always, something you have and then something right? Or something something you have. So something is the password, and something you have is your phone. And who doesn't have their phone with them all the time?
Right.
So, people live with their phones. A lot of businesses are saying, hey, can my users have a simpler password but have the second authentication with an SMS that pops up on their phone, or you have an authentication app on your phone and you have to plug in that other information? Technically, yes, you can get away with an easier password. I'm not saying make it simple, but it could be a little bit easier so that you can use your second set of authentication. A lot of companies are into that. I myself use two-factor authentication on many websites because especially on my financial websites. Any financial website that I'm on, it's two-factor all the way because it doesn't matter if I can remember the password. I also keep a password keeper, right? I have a password program. I have one super master password, and it takes care of all my other crazy passwords that I just don't remember. But even on that, I have it on a two-factor authentication because that is one way to keep your financials at least another layer down in the stack. And businesses are really getting into two-factor authentication because it's so simple. You just download the app. You usually, it has a Q code, or you type in this certain thing, and voila, it's connected to your account. Whenever you put in your password, the code shows up on your phone. You type in that code, and you're in. It's not that big of a deal.
Makes a lot of sense.
Now, the question is, does it work with a lot of sites? Well, yeah, okay, so I have 2 or 3 authentication apps. I'm okay with that. As I said, our partner is Sophos, so Sophos has an authentication app. I use that app. I also can keep passwords in it. It's it's an encrypted vault, so I use the Microsoft Authenticator. I use the Google Authenticator. Whichever site I'm on, I use my banking authenticators. Another thing is that when you turn these on from your banks, you really get a sense that, hey, someone could sit there and hack you to death and say, oh, I want to change the password, and I want to call in, and I want to do this, and guess what? You can't do anything because they're looking for that second piece of information from the authenticator, and the authenticator is locked to you. So without them having your phone, it's kind of difficult for them to do anything.
Yep. And Mike, I hate to say this, but we're running up on the break. Would you mind staying over so we can talk about how individuals and maybe point of sale could what they should watch out for with the holiday season?
Yeah, that would be
Oh,
great.
perfect. So, everyone out there, the music means we're going to take a break. We are talking to Mr. Michael Lewis. He is the CIO of Copper State Communications. You can check them out. We have a link over at Computer America right to it. And, folks, we'll be right back. More Computer America right after this. Stay tuned.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. We are 31 minutes past the hour, and it wasn't too bad. We are talking with Copper State Communications, carrying over because I did want to get, there was a lot of great advice on how to get, businesses nice and safe and secure. But I'm sure that Michael Lewis here, who is again the CIO of Copper State Communications, has a lot of advice for point of sale, because that is one of the most targeted, especially nowadays. Vulnerabilities. That's the word. That card skimmers and things like that. The talk of that has died down, but I'm sure the threat hasn't. So, Michael, again, thanks for staying over. And I think we should start talking about, e-commerce. Actually, two sizes, because there's e-commerce and then physical retail stores, and how consumers, what they can do to watch out for themselves, and for businesses who maybe are trying to, run hundreds of transactions a day, how they can protect themselves. So I'll let you decide, either e-commerce or physical retail. Do you have any advice for them?
Well, for physical retail, let's start there. So one of the first things that, so as a retailer, it's pretty tough, right? You want to sell your goods to people, but you need to try to figure out how not to get ripped off. So there's a double-edged sword there for a retailer. It's a pretty tough business. So if you have a shop and you're going to start taking, Apple Pay and Google Pay and all of these different payment systems where they magically wave their phone and voila, you get the money. That's great, and for the consumer, that's great. But the one thing and there's really nothing that you can do about that technology, right? Because it's kind of in its own little farm. It's in its own little bubble. There's not much that you can do with that. The consumer, on the other hand, they need to protect themselves, because that is really RFID. Some of it's a little bit of, a combination of either RFID Bluetooth or RFID wireless in order to get everything to work right. Make sure that your phone is not easily detectable and hackable from people that are going and listening for your phone to sit there and hack it as you're shopping. So, but for the retailer, let's get back to them. One of the funny things is about a retailer is that, what's the first thing you do? You print a receipt, right? After someone has bought something. And a lot of retailers now use printers. Well, printers are a huge hole in your security, believe it or not. A lot of printers now come with Wi-Fi, and they're set up to to either accept everything on the Wi-Fi. They have no security inside of a printer. So if I'm a retailer or we go into a retail shop, the first thing I do is look at their printers and ask, is that a Wi-Fi printer? Most of the time I don't know. And then the second thing I do is go over and make sure that the Wi-Fi is turned off. You should not be using Wi-Fi on your print devices if you're a retailer. I can inject code into that printer, and I can actually start snooping your network, and I can pick up every single packet on your network.
Well, and that's something that people are getting more and more used to, the idea of, where you say printer, and printers are pretty obvious for a workspace, but I mean, we're seeing it more and more where it's not just people's printers, but in maybe even businesses, maybe it's security web cameras, which are, depending on where you buy them from, are notoriously poor on security out of the box, or maybe even things, or folks, it's just the Internet of Things. That's essentially what I'm getting at. It's not just printers and computers. Like, people need to make sure they have security for all of these different devices, be it a light bulb, a door lock, a webcam, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ben, you're right, because, absolutely, Ben, because, this Internet of Things. So you have to look at who's creating these things. Well, a manufacturer's creating the thing. Manufacturers are not security companies. So they're saying, okay, I'm going to create this door lock, and I'm going to write code in it, and I'm going to make it work with this phone, and magically, okay, we've got it to work. But I didn't write anything in there to keep people out of it. I just wrote it to make it easy for the user to connect the phone to the door. So you've got a hole in there that a hacker can just go and say, well, look, I can read that information from the door, because the door's broadcasting like Santa Claus or something like that. And I'm going to pick up that information, and I'm going to refactor that on my phone, and guess what? Hit the button, your house just opens up for me. So this Internet of Things, you have to be careful with the Internet of Things, including, that's going to be coming up, which is cars, self-driving cars. They've already proven that they can hack into a car and press the brakes or speed it up or make it do things that you don't want it to do, because the manufacturers are not security specialists, and they're just writing code to get their thing to work, not writing code and not looking at what someone who would have a malicious intent would want to do to that. So, and that's the same thing with the retailers. If you have a POS system that you're downloading software to, make sure that it's coming from that site. The one thing that we're seeing a lot of are phishing attacks, especially now during this season. A retailer is answering emails, and they're trying to keep their customers happy, and they're trying to conduct business, right? So you've got emails flying in and out of your mailbox, and you see this one email come in that looks like it's from a shipping department or whatever. You're just trying to get your job done, right? So you click the button, and off you go to the website, and guess what? I'm going to drop some malware on your machine. It happens a lot during this time because people are not watching what they're clicking, especially business owners who are trying to sell as much as they can during the season. So for a retailer, be very, very careful. That goes for, storefront retailers and e-commerce, especially e-commerce, because that's all they deal with is electronics. So electronic mail. So make sure that you have a good, kind of circles back to antivirus malware when you start clicking and reading these emails, and try not to get phish attacked, because it's rampant. And then that's when you get the cryptoware, and you're kind of out of business for 2 or 3 days until you can get yourself unlocked.
Right. Yeah. And
the Bitcoin guys love that. So
yeah. And with the rise of Bitcoin, you definitely don't want to owe them 1 Bitcoin, because that can be, extremely horrible. But one part of security that we haven't mentioned, but again, this is something that we recommend for disaster recovery and for other things other than security. But if you could speak real quick about the possible benefits of keeping backups, either on-site or, off-site, and just, the benefits of having backups.
Well, we will not. So we do managed services.
Mm-hmm.
We will not do a managed service if we do not install backup. It is the full stop, end of the discussion with me if that company does not want to do backups. Because at the end of the day, I have to sleep, they need to sleep, and I'm not sleeping if I don't have a backup of your data, because you can get crypto where they can delete everything on your network. I don't know, your smoke starts coming through the building and water, the sprinklers turn on. Anything can happen. As long as you have a backup, I can get you back into business. If you do not have a backup, then you have basically, said, if my systems go down, it's not that important to keep that customer data. So, at that point, I don't know what to tell you, because you need to have a backup, even if it's your personal laptop, and have a backup. Even if you're using like one of the box applications where you're synchronizing your data, at least that's another copy somewhere else. It's not on your machine.
Right.
Always, always, always have a backup. If you don't have a backup, you're just asking for it.
Right. So, yep, and thank you for definitely mentioning that. A few more questions, and I promise to wrap this up. But one of the questions we had here that did, kind of strike me was something that I accidentally ran into, and you have it here listed as friendly fraud, and you can talk about what that is, but. Essentially, someone claims that they did not get a package from you. You are the business, and you are sending something out, and they call customer service and say, "Hey, we didn't get that. Send another." And that is, as you say, a type of fraud. And and I just want to mention that from a personal point of view, here at Computer America, we get a lot of products shipped to us from a lot of different companies, and it's sometimes hard to keep track of it all. Things can fall through the cracks. And we actually had it the opposite way, where according to the shipping company, they shipped it out. According to our receiving place, they received it. No one could figure out where the package was. I had to call them back and say, listen, we don't know where this is. Could you send another one out? They did not take too kindly to this. So, we just really didn't have a way to kind of verify and say, hey, we didn't steal your stuff. Legitimately, there was a breakdown somewhere, and I can't really prove it any other way. So could you talk about, again, you listed friendly fraud, but how can businesses protect themselves from it, and how can individuals who may be receiving packages, and let's face it, Amazon is shipping out more and more. People walking up and stealing packages is a very common thing. How can people protect themselves?
Yeah, that's a tough one for a business, because again, you don't want to put up firewalls in front of your potential customers, right? So for the business owner, unfortunately, it's going to add cost to your items, but you have to kind of levy out, what is this item worth to me? Okay, if I'm shipping out a $50 or less item, you know what? I'm just going to take a chance that it gets there, and I'm just going to ship it. No big deal. If it's a $500 item, you know what? I will probably just spend the money and put a track on it. The Postal Service has it, UPS, FedEx. Everybody has tracking where you can just add that little extra, whatever it is, $1.50 to $2, to actually have someone sign for that, or at least have it tracked through. If it's worth it to you to do that, then I would definitely look at doing that. Because once it's out of your office, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, we all know that FedEx and those guys try their best, but sometimes they do lose packages. And that's usually easy on their end to find. But now, let's say that the package goes all the way through and you have a package thief at the other end. So now I'm the consumer and I'm waiting for my new gadget to arrive. Right. And I get this thing that pops up on my phone, of course, and says, hey, your package has arrived. Cool. I get home, no package. So now what am I doing? I'm calling you up saying, hey, I didn't get my package, but yet we both can see that it says it arrived. Well, that's, again, where the tracking or the must-have signature comes into play, because it protects you as the business owner and you as the customer. So even though the carrier may have just dropped it off, it explicitly said, hey, there must be a signature here. So no signature means that they can always go back, me as the business owner can go back to the carrier and say, it was stolen, there's no signature. If there's no signature, you pay the insurance. That's what I paid for. Me as the customer, I can always call the company and say, hey, I know it says it was delivered, I didn't sign for it, find the signature, you won't find it, send me another one. So it helps me as the customer and you as the business that if it's worth a certain amount of money or value, to go ahead and put that extra amount on there. There's no way you're going to keep, the porch nappers from stealing your stuff. The only thing you can do there is to put up a camera, hope that other people in your neighborhood have a camera, and if it's someone in the neighborhood, you can probably track them down. But if they're, it's very difficult to stop those guys.
So, and just as a personal thing, I'm not asking you to comment on behalf of Copper State Communications or anything, but just as a personal, how did you feel about Amazon and the idea that they had access to, again, the Internet of Things, the smart lock on your front door, and they would drop packages off inside your home rather than on your front porch, which again would minimize the amount of people running off with them. But, just as a security-minded individual, how'd you feel about that?
Yeah, probably not at my house.
All right.
I'm just not liking that idea. I mean, and just think about all the complication, just the easy complication. Your pet, right? The guy opens up the door, the pet freaks out, the pet runs out the door. Who's chasing down the pet? I mean,
right.
just off the top of my head, I'm like, what are you going to keep your cat or your dog in a cage all day because the Amazon guy is coming by? I don't know. It's not at my house. Let's just put it that way.
So pretty complicated. And again, I think you did lay out some very good tips for minimizing these as either one of them. And I'm sure, as a customer, you could, explicitly state that, hey, I would really like, XYZ. So no, makes perfect sense. And again, these types of fraud, we've already seen them plastered, on like the 5 o'clock news. I'm sure wherever you are. I think a couple of days ago there was that video of a woman pulled up and someone else was driving, snagged a package. Someone tackled her or something like that. Or she, fell out of the van. The van drove away. Can't imagine that's a very good friend. But yeah, I mean, it certainly is happening. So signing, tracking numbers, all good. Definitely do that. So, and I'll leave this to you, Michael. Did we talk about, or did we miss any part of either Copper State Communications or any security tips you wanted to go over? Because we're just kind of flat out of time.
Well, I think the only other security tip real quick that I'll tell people is that, as you're using credit cards, everybody does. The one thing that you can do to make sure that you don't become a victim of credit card fraud is just turn on the alerting services on your credit cards. Just go online, turn on the alerting, set it for a certain dollar amount so that each time you run your credit card, if it's over that dollar amount, you get an alert on your phone so that if anybody duplicates your card, they try to run it, it runs over a certain amount, you'll know about it before, and then you can just immediately call up the credit card company and say, I didn't charge that. So that's an easy tip for everybody. As far as the Copper State and the business that we do, well, as I said earlier, we do everything. I'm open to talking to everyone about their business, whether you've been in business, you're a new business. Certain things happen for new businesses that will not happen to existing businesses and vice versa. So it's really a deep conversation. I love to have those. So if people need that conversation or they need that support, we're always here to help.
Yeah, I see that. And full, support and contact and your phone number right there available. Everyone, copper-state.com if you want to check them out. Link in the show notes. And again, Michael, thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise. And I think a lot of people, if they haven't heard this before, they needed to hear everything we talked about today. So I'm going to say, again, thank you for coming on the show. A lot of fun. Michael Lewis, CIO of Copper State Communications. Michael, yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, it's been great, Ben. You have a
Our
great
pleasure.
day.
You too, and have a great holiday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So there he goes. And again, you can find more out at computeramerica.com. So in the meantime, we have about 10 minutes left to do computer and technology news. And, we have a lot of stories. Not going to be able to get to all of them, but a few I definitely wanted to hit. So why don't we go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. Here we go. And computer and technology news is brought to you by Fire Dragon Security. Let's go ahead and decide to choose. All right, how about this one? Tesla semis. They were super cool, when they were announced just about a month ago. But looking cool is only part of what they need to do, because the other side of the equation is, well, they need to be sought after. People are going to have to want to buy these things. And, well, looks like a number of companies, and there was one, I think it was like Anheuser-Busch bought like 20 of them. There was another company that bought like 50 of them. And now with the largest reservation placed with Tesla semis. And this is from Ars Technica, Megan Guess. And, yeah, PepsiCo. You know them. They make Pepsi. Reserves 100 Tesla semis. And so they say at about $20,000 a pop, which honestly seems super low. And okay, let's put it this way. They were reserved for $20,000 a piece. That does not mean that they are actually purchased for $20,000 a piece. So yeah, so we'll definitely see what how the final cost actually shakes out. But the largest reservation so far, again, and this is just found out today by Reuters, and that the order is the largest public one to date and may have cost the food and beverage manufacturer about $2 million. So they said that several transportation firms are holding off on the Tesla for now, citing uncertainty over time it takes to recharge compared to a diesel fill-up, which, yeah, is fair, but we talk about ways around that. And they say that range and payload capabilities and how the market for electric commercial vehicles will develop. I got to say, though, that just looking at the pictures of this thing, and again, if you're watching the video portion, you can see them here, but just looking at the picture of these things, they might just be worth it just for their aesthetics alone. Because if you saw these things, cruising along the interstate with a logo plastered on it, you're gonna, it's really gonna catch the eye. So they said about 260,000 heavy-duty Class 8 trucks are produced in North America annually. And they said that Navistar International Group and Volkswagen Truck and Bus are working to launch an electric. There we go. To launch an electric medium-duty truck by late 2019, while rival Daimler AG, or Mercedes, has delivered the first of a smaller range of electric trucks to customers in New York. So they said that Tesla currently has about 285 reservations in hand, and, well, Pepsi intends to deploy the Tesla semis for shipment of snack foods and beverages between manufacturing and distribution facilities and direct to retailers within 500 range promised by Tesla chief executive Elon Musk. So let's wrap this up by saying that PepsiCo is analyzing what routes are best for its Tesla trucks, but sees a wide range of uses for lighter loads like snacks or shorter shipments of heavier beverages. Let's see. Yep. So, and they said that production of these trucks are going to be starting in 2019. And Pepsi did decline to say how much they paid to reserve its trucks, but when it placed its order, or whether it plans to lease the trucks or buy them outright, where Tesla initially asked $5,000 per truck for pre-orders, but the amount has since risen to $20,000. Part of that can only be assumed to actually ramp up production of these things, because dealing with your everyday consumer, that's one thing. But when businesses demand these trucks and they demand them on time, you don't want any of those production delays that at this point we can only say Tesla is known for, which is production delays. So there you have it. There's that one. One I really wanted to cover. And so let's see. There was another one, which I think we're only going to have time for one more. But folks, you may have heard about it. Let's do this one. So Netflix. There's an opinion piece. There are a number of opinion pieces floating around the internet. Picked up this one from TechCrunch, great site, and the author, Natasha Lamas. And I've seen a number of reactions to this where Netflix sent out a pretty humorous tweet. There's no denying it. It has 430,000 likes, 100,000 retweets, things like that. And so popular is a good way to start it. But the tweet essentially said, to the 53 people who've watched A Christmas Prince every day for the past 18 days, who hurt you? So obviously, this is Netflix showing off the kind of data that it is able to collect from its users, and is then, kind of pointing it out and saying that, hey, there are some trends here that are, in this case, a little humorous. We've heard other reports that Netflix has before used this data to check in on people. Their watching habits are suddenly different than than it was previously. And essentially, this opinion piece, we could pick it apart line by line, but what it's essentially doing. All right, let's take this one. In the age of online user profiling, ad-targeted, omnipresent surveillance capitalism, you might think a jesty tweet poking a little festive fun would go unremarked, or maybe even be taken as lighthearted teaser it was apparently intended to be. And the author said, no. Yeah, whatever. But saying that the first rule of surveillance capitalism is that you don't talk about surveillance capitalism, obviously a riff off of Fight Club, but I don't think that's right. And, it's a little contrary that people want transparency. People want, these companies to sit here and tell us what they're doing with our data. And then when a company such as Netflix is even the slightest bit open about how it collects its data and the kind of insights it's able to pull from that. And again, they didn't release anyone's personal name. They didn't list the 53 people. They didn't call anyone out. But the author of this article really seems to have it out, and citing a number of people who also responded to Netflix, such as this individual here tweeted out, "Very creepy Netflix, not cool spying on your paying customers and then judging them in public." Luckily, that only got a very small reaction compared to the initial tweet, but I think it's actually better that Netflix shows us the kinds of things they're doing with the data, which is analyzing what we're doing and saying, hey, remember, we're out there. Instead of the supposed way I think the author wants to take it as, don't ever mention what you're actually doing, which seems a little ostrich, stick your head in the sand and hope everything's okay, doesn't really solve anything. So regardless, just not enough time to finish this article and not enough time to get into any others. More available at computeramerica.com. Check it out, as well as the entire show in podcast form. You can check that out right there at the top or wherever podcasts are heard. Folks, we're just out of time. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we have on the show none other than, well, hey, the woman herself, Sandy Berger. She is our Computer America consumer electronics correspondent and all around, great correspondent as we talk about, hey, some of her must-buys, things like that. Tune in tomorrow for more Computer America. And folks, thanks for tuning in. Have a great one. Bye-bye.